Hey, folks, and welcome into the Horns 24/7 postgame analysis show. Texas picks up a 40-14 victory over number 24 Kansas this past Saturday. They moved to 5-0 for the first time since 2009. Let's go ahead and take a look at this game a little bit more in depth, and we'll start off on the defensive side of the ball. So the big story there was Jalen Daniels, starting quarterback for Kansas, unable to go, was a late scratch from this game with some back soreness. So Texas defense has to adjust a little bit, and they made it look like a complete non-factor in this one. Jason Bean, their backup quarterback, the Kansas Jayhawks backup quarterback, ends up getting the start. And, some would say that, yeah, that's not necessarily the best, but Jason Bean also has a lot of experience in this Kansas offense. Last year, he started 5 games for him. He knows the system. He knows the playbook. He started against Missouri State earlier this year for the Jayhawks as well. So this is a guy who understands what Lance Leipold wants to do offensively, and Steve Sarkisian touched on it in his presser as well, that they knew whether Jalen Daniels went or not, the offense for Kansas was going to be more or less the same. Now, I'm not saying that Jason Bean is better than Jalen Daniels, or this game wouldn't have been different if Jalen Daniels had played, but nonetheless, you got to give some credit to Jason Bean as well. He's been around for quite some time. But more credit, I think, goes to this Texas defense. Coming into this game, Kansas was the number 25 offense in the nation in yards per game, 463, excuse me. Texas holds them to 260 total. And then the big stat for me, I talked about this with Eric yesterday in the instant reaction. On third down, Kansas was the number 1 offense in the country, converting 60.5% of their third downs. They went 0 for 8 on Saturday. So this Texas defense doing a wonderful job shutting them down there. One thing to keep an eye on going forward is the safety play along the back. Keaton Crawford got taken deep later on in that game that allowed Kansas to score their second touchdown. That might have been just a little miscommunication, but nonetheless, stuff like that can't happen against teams like Oklahoma coming down the line. And this Texas secondary has given up some deep shots, even going back to the Baylor game and maybe even Alabama a couple of weeks prior. So keep an eye on that. Jaron Thompson also didn't have his best day. They'll need to step it up for next week for Oklahoma. Let's transition now into the offense. They continue to look really balanced. I think this is the most balanced that they've looked, over 300 yards on each side of the ball. They put up 27 points in the second half, but they were getting plenty enough yardage in the first half to make it 27 points in that half as well. Just had some struggles in the red zone, excuse me. So nonetheless, career day for Jonathan Brooks, 20 carries, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think he's established himself as the clear first option in the running back room. Not to discredit Cedric Baxter, but he's still not 100% yet. Still working his way back into it. Jonathan Brooks, a reliable option for the Longhorns to start for running back. Quinn Ewers was once again efficient, 71% completion percentage, 325 yards, a touchdown through the air, 2 rushing touchdowns. He did throw his first interception of the season, but I think that's overshadowed by how well of a job he did leading this Texas offense. You really have to credit him for that, because Eric and I talked about this yesterday, and I've harped on it before as well. Quinn Ewers doesn't need to put up a ton of numbers. He doesn't need to score 5 touchdowns a game for this Texas offense to be successful. He just needs to be a point guard. He needs to distribute the ball to his players that will make plays for him. And all in all, it will turn out good. And that's exactly what happened on Saturday as well. And you also have to credit the offensive line. I think this was one of, if not their best games so far this season, creating those gaps for Jonathan Brooks and Cedric Baxter. I think they played one of their better games of the season. Adonai Mitchell, proving that he and Xavier Worthy are basically wide receiver 1A and 1B. Kansas made sure that they put a lot of emphasis on Xavier Worthy, and then Adonai Mitchell was open a lot. He led the team in receptions, 10 receptions for 141 yards and a touchdown. Worthy added 7 receptions for 93 yards, and Xavier Worthy goes over 2,000 career yards in his third season here at Texas. Last kind of takeaway that we'll touch on here, really, I think if you're Texas, you really hope that you can get Jatavian Sanders and Ryan Watts back. JT Sanders got rolled up with a left ankle injury. We saw him come out of the tent on the sidelines and try to test it out, try to get some weight on it and run up and down. But after a conversation with Steve Sarkisian, it seemed like it was just better for everyone to not get him back into the game. And I think that was the right decision. So Steve Sarkisian said on the press conference, too, that he felt it was beneficial to just keep him out the rest of the game. They're hopeful to get him back for Oklahoma this coming Saturday. Ryan Watts went out with a leg injury, and other than that, there was no further information provided. We'll find out more maybe in Steve Sarkisian's press conference on Monday. So now we look ahead to Oklahoma, the number 12 ranked Sooners, 5-0 in year two under Brent Venables. Dylan Gabriel is playing very well, 75% completion percentage, 1,593 yards for 15 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. 4 different receivers for the Sooners are already over 200 yards receiving on the year. Nick Anderson has been playing extremely well. They like to throw him the ball deep. I would keep an eye on him on Saturday and see how they try to get him involved. The OU defense also looks like they've found their footing as well, which is the benefit of having Brent Venables as your head coach. Remember, he did such a good job at Clemson, and so far they look much improved. They gave up 20 points to Iowa State on Saturday night. That's the most they've given up to any team all season. Danny Stutzman has looked like the tackling machine he was made out to be. He's got 49 on the season to go along with 2 sacks and an interception. And this Oklahoma secondary and defense entirely is playing very well when it comes to getting interceptions. They've got 10 on the year. So sure, the argument can be made that, Oklahoma hasn't played any elite teams yet. They haven't played any very strong teams, but I don't think that can discredit the fact that they have been playing at a high level. And in comparison to the Oklahoma team that Texas saw last year in a 49-0 blowout, is very different, and they are extremely improved across the board. And so we will close this out with questions that remain to be answered for Texas. Number one, what version of Texas are we going to see to start this game against Oklahoma? Texas has finished out all of their games very strongly, but at times they start off slow. And against a team like Oklahoma, you can't have that happen. You want to get off to a good start and catch the momentum early. Obviously, you still want to finish well too, but Texas can't come in any more games with people not knowing what version you're going to see of them. So we'll see if Texas ends up struggling in that first half. They did not last year, and in fact, it was quite the opposite. So we'll see if that continues to go. Steve Sarkisian offensively has done a phenomenal job preparing for this Oklahoma game. The last 2 times he's played, they've had over 500 yards of total offense. We'll see if that streak continues. Can there still be a balance in offense, or will Oklahoma's defense force the Longhorns to lean one way or another? We mentioned how Oklahoma's already caused 10 interceptions to their opposing teams. Quinn Ewers has only thrown 1, but if they get disruptive, will this be a game where Quinn Ewers and the Texas offense have to lean on Jonathan Brooks and CJ Baxter to try and get them down the field? If he plays, how healthy is Jatavian Sanders would be the next question. Last year against Oklahoma, he had 5 receptions for 71 yards and 2 touchdowns. They certainly would love to have him back. It would be a massive loss if JT Sanders is unable to go. They do have Gunnar Helm, who did play well on Saturday, but you certainly want to have your potentially All-American tight end on the field with you against your rival in one of the bigger games of the season. And last but not least, can this Texas secondary take deep shots off the board and not suffer any busts in coverage? Oklahoma has shown they like to throw the ball deep. I mentioned Nick Anderson earlier, a guy they like to go to down the field. So can this Texas secondary communicate better, avoid those coverage busts, and try to take some deep shots off the board for Oklahoma next week? We will find out next Saturday at the Cotton Bowl, 11 a.m. kickoff set up on ABC. Number 3 Texas and number 12 Oklahoma in the 119th meeting between those two teams. They're last in the Big 12 before they depart to the SEC. Thanks so much for joining us here on the post-game analysis show. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel. Plus, turn on notifications so you're the first to know when new content heads your way. For the rest of the crew, I'm Tommy Yarsh. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.